All right, so we're going to go ahead and start step 11. We're actually going to break this part, step 11, up into a few videos so that we can discuss the things without ending up with a 2-hour long video. In our last step, what we did is we focused on people, and we learned about HTML tables and how to use HTML tables and populate them and put them into a page and put some styling along with them. In this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to start focusing on things, and we're going to focus on music and movies. We're going to learn how to make an iframe, use an iframe to actually play a YouTube video. We're going to focus on using YouTube videos so that we don't overcomplicate things and we just keep consistent. And we're going to learn how to make cards and how to use a little bit of JavaScript and populate our cards with our favorite bands and our favorite movies. We'll move over to movies here and take a look as well. Love things, movies. And the movies are going to be exact same code as cards, except for the information is going to be different, the data that we actually enter into these. What we'll do is we'll make our iframe in our YouTube player, put our YouTube player in, and we'll put that in both of our movies and our music page, and then we'll start focusing and we'll make one card and then reuse that card over and over again. We'll learn how to grab the ID of the YouTube video. We'll learn how to grab an image, put an image in a background of a div, and we'll learn how to make the page using JavaScript scroll and also update the movie player with the YouTube video that we want to focus on. With that, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So as we always start a step, we're going to go out and go to our folder. We're going to take step 9, copy it, paste it, rename it to step 11. Hop over to brackets, open our folder, and we're ready to get going. First thing we want to do, we'll go ahead, we'll start in the movies page, and in the movies page, we're going to go ahead and collapse our header so that we can see more, actually work in our page. And we're going to be working inside the right after the header, between the header and the footer. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is build our iframe. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use copy and paste, but explain the code as we put it in. And to build our iframe, what we want to do is I'm going to hit beautify so I can clean up my code, and we're going to take that section, and if you saw, essentially what we did is we replaced the P, the paragraph tag, with our iframe code. And what our iframe code looks like is we're sticking it inside of a section, and then we're creating a div, and divs act like containers, as we learned earlier. They hold information and hold other elements, and it's a way to contain elements collectively, putting them together and manage them via one place. We're giving this div an ID of main screen, and the reason we're giving it an ID of main screen is just in case we want to point to it and do something specifically inside this div where our iframe movie player is, as well as we have better control with CSS over our iframe by putting it inside of a div. Our iframe, what is an iframe? So essentially, when we look at what an iframe is, we can see that what an iframe is an element, and we have attributes inside of it. And those attributes are, we're using an ID so that we can point to it and we can do different things. Another attribute is source, and the current value is a YouTube video. And we're saying we don't want a border around it. And if somebody wants to make the iframe full screen, we're going to go ahead and let them make it full screen as well. What an iframe does is it actually pulls another web page into a web page, as crazy as that sounds. And so we'll start off by, what we're going to start off with is we're going to put Agabus hosting in here. It's a page we're all familiar with. And we're going to go out and take a look at what exactly it does. And we're having some difficulty pulling it in, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look. I did not put .com. That usually helps. Let's go take a look again. And what we can see is we can actually see our Agabus hosting page right inside of the iframe. It acts like a little window, and that little window pulls in a website to it and allows us to actually include other web pages inside a web page. And where this is going to be important to us is that we are going to be able to use this to pull in our YouTube video and display it right inside of our page. If I go back and I undo putting in agabushosting.com and allow the YouTube video to come in, and I hit save and I come out and look at it, we can see right there is the YouTube video. So with that, we now have our iframe in. We learn about the iframe a little more in the lesson. There's a video and some reading material to learn a little more about the iframe. And one other thing that we want to put in here is inside the iframe element, we're going to go ahead and put in your browser currently does not support iframes. And the reason we're putting this is this will display should their browser not support using iframes, or if there's a problem with the iframe, so that they realize that there's something there. And we could even put, please contact your website some type of message to just let them know that there should be content here, and if they're not seeing it, they might want to explore why they're not seeing it. It could be a problem on their end, or it could be a problem on our end, or more likely, if there is a problem, it's a security issue. We'll come out, we'll take a look. Let's go ahead, let's refresh it, take a look again. Our iframe is there and it's good. Now that we've built our iframe, we might as well go ahead and style it a while. And again, you're not expected to write CSS in this lesson. So I've made it available. As usual, it's always available in the assignment itself. We'll go out and we'll grab the CSS specifically for the iframe. This area is blank at the moment. We're still working on the assignment, but I do have the assignment resources available. They're always available on the right. Of course, we have the project overview, what we're going to be doing. And then we have the changelog. And the changelog holds the information for what is the code that's changing, so that you have a reference point and you can see it, and as well with the CSS for you to grab the CSS. Talking about iframes, this currently right now, what we're looking at, this is an iframe. We're pulling a page into this iframe, and you'll see in here in the changelog that we actually do, here's the CSS that we're going to use. So to get started, we could just grab it all at this point and put it in. It doesn't matter, and then we can talk about it. So why don't we update our style sheet a while and grab that CSS out of the changelog and go over, and we'll just click on our style sheet, go to the very bottom, and we'll paste our styles in for our card that we're going to be working on. And also you can see the last two styles are for our iframe and the div that's holding the iframe. What we're doing with the div is we're giving it a background color. We're center aligning everything, and we're telling it to take up 90% of the page width. We're putting a little padding around it to make sure that iframe doesn't hit up against the corners and the sides and make it look too bad. And we're putting a margin around it, meaning the outside of the div. So we're saying we want 20 pixels on top and bottom, and then we want the left and right to auto margin itself, because we have it set at a percentage. We want it to automatically center itself in the page, and that's what auto will do. We're making the corners a little more rounded, just to get a little more feel with it. And then we're putting a border on of black to match the background color, which helps us with the border radius. If we don't have this on, the border radius doesn't work in all browsers. It will work in some, but for the most part will not. Then we're going to tell the iframe that we want it to be 400 pixels high, and we want it to take on a width of 100%. So the padding will keep it off of the sides. And let's hit save. And at this point, we actually should be able to go out to our page itself and the page we're working on. Oops, wrong page. And you can see it's already taken on the shape because we're in live preview. Live preview, it will update with everything that we use. So in this step, this is great. We can go ahead and check our video, which is working. We're preloading a video in it so it does not come up just blank, and we have our video sitting there and ready to go. All right, so we can close out our style sheet at this point and return to our movies. And it would not be a bad idea at this point to go ahead, copy our section that we've put in between the header and the footer, take a copy of that, and we'll open up our movies page, our music page, sorry. Come down, we'll close our header, and we'll actually just replace the whole section with the section that we had. We'll hit save. We can worry about the content and the header, the video, default video at a later time. We'll go back out. We'll go to love, things. We're currently on music. Let's go to movies. And we have them both there. Awesome. So before we get started on our cards, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and gather our music and our movies. And I'll go ahead and do a quick overview of how I believe you should do that. You are welcome to do it as we go along, but it will prolong the process of getting the coding done because you'll lose focus of what you're working on. Okay, so let's talk about getting the information together. What is required of this lesson is 6 of your favorite movies and 6 of your favorite songs. I would recommend that you do not try to identify the top 6 of each. That will take you that definitely will consume some of your time. What you want to do is potentially just take the first 6 that come to mind. The first thing that we want to do is we want to compile a list in a text document, and in that list what we want is the YouTube ID of the movie or the song. It doesn't have to be the movie. It shouldn't really be the movie. It should be the trailer or maybe a clip from the movie or something of that nature. And then we want to go out and find an image that represents the movie or a song that we're talking about. And then we want to make sure we have the title, and we want to make sure that we have 1 to 2 sentences that we can use for that movie or song. I have no problem with where you get it from. There are no legalities that we have to be concerned about. This is a project. We're not making money off of this website. We're not putting it out. So using other people's verbiage or pictures is perfectly fine in this scenario. If this were a paid site or something we were trying to put out there to make money or represent an organization, it would not be a good idea to go out and use other people's images or their verbiage. YouTube videos would be in question. You'd have to research that. And so to get started, first of all, how do we get the YouTube ID? Well, the way that we can go about getting our YouTube ID is literally just go to YouTube. And let's say we're looking for a song. And let's go ahead and say that that song is Take a Picture by Filter, and we can see it's coming up there. And we'll go ahead and we'll click on the song. Usually an advertisement comes up. That's okay. It's what happens, and you can skip the ad for those of you who are not familiar with YouTube. And now the song is actually playing in the background with the video. Somebody made this video. If this is what I wanted to use, I could use this one, or I could find, a different one. But the point is what we're looking for is we see up here in the URL that we have a link, and that link, it includes parameters, a parameter. And what that question mark is it's basically saying, hey, here's the parameters that you need. And parameters are pieces of information. We call them key value pairs. The V would be the key equals, and this would be the value. That would make it the key value pair. This is the ID that YouTube uses to know which video you're requesting. And the V is the parameter. It tells YouTube, hey, I'm looking for a video, and here's the ID of the video. What we want is this ID. So you would copy and paste this ID into your text document, as I have done here. You can see I have all the YouTube IDs that I need for my songs and for my movies. If you look in here, also for my movies. To show you more how that would work, if I go ahead and I take the ID for this Napoleon Dynamite movie, and I go back to my browser, and I actually put the value in there, the video equals, and the V equals, and put that in, we see that it automatically, that it just brings up our YouTube video, the clip that I've chosen for that video as one of my favorite movies. The next thing that we want to do is we want to find a picture to represent our movie or our video. The way that we can do that is easiest way is go out to Google, search for, in this case, Napoleon Dynamite, hit images, and now I can go down through here and I can find a picture that I want to use inside of my box. Let's go take a peek real quick so that we know what we're talking about. A picture that I can use inside my card, in my image in my card. The picture is easy to grab. Let's say I wanted this one of Napoleon and Pedro, and I click on it. Now that's a pretty large image. We can see that. We prefer not to have such a large image. And so as we go through, we can just look for different images. If the one you want is super large, that's fine. We can go ahead and use it. But in a real world scenario, you only want it to be as large as you need it to be. And in our case, we need it to be about 300 by 500 is the ideal size, 300 high by 500 wide. The way that we save the picture is just hover over it, right click, and save image as. Now in this one we got lucky. We have it's named Napoleon Dynamite Cast. But what you want to do is sometimes you'll end up with a picture that's makes absolutely no sense, the naming, and you want to make sure you name it that you know how you're going to get to it. So in this case, if it were 59J783 whatever, I would rename it to Napoleon Dynamite. and then I just want to save that picture. And I'm saving it in downloads. If you're not familiar with saving it in downloads and how that all works, you have a challenging road ahead of you. Let's just put it that way. The next thing that we need is just a couple lines of text to put about our movie or about the song. We just want some information to be available, kind of like teaser information about what you're looking at. And honestly, one of the best, easiest ways to go about that in most cases is you'll find that information, usually Wikipedia, somewhere, some website, in this case Wikipedia. And what I would do is I would just go ahead and I would grab the first couple sentences, copy them, put them in my notepad, and use that. All I care about is that it's relative to the card information, the song or the movie, and that is how I would recommend that you go out and you gather all the information for both the movie and the videos, movies and videos, so that we, as we're coding and we're working, we have a text file that we can just pull this information from and not worry about having to go and grab the information while we're in the middle of coding. One last thing I would recommend while you're looking for your YouTube videos, I would make sure that as you're out finding those videos, let's say we're going to do the James Taylor Fire and Rain by James Taylor. In our WordPress section, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to create playlists, and we're going to pull our movies and videos in by playlists. And the way that we create a playlist in YouTube, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is you come down here to, you see this share and likes and dislikes, and there's this button where it's a couple lines. We call that a hamburger, actually, with a plus. And you'll see down here that you can create playlists. And when you create a playlist, you can add the song that you want to that playlist, and you end up with playlists such as my favorite songs, my favorite movies. And I've created these two playlists. And in our WordPress portion, in step 10, we're going to just pull, we're going to do exactly what we're doing in our HTML with music and movies, but we're going to pull these in with playlists instead of individual movies. So I highly suggest that as you're going through, you create your playlists and you position yourself so when it's time to work on the WordPress section step of this project, you have those playlists already created and you don't have to go and search for the movies and the songs again. Okay. So now we have our movies and our music. We have it lined up. Our player is on the top of our page, our iframe. We've learned about an iframe. Now the next thing that we need to go and create is our cards, is these little cards down here. And make them look the way that they do. And we'll worry about functionality in the step following that. But at this time, let's go ahead and let's learn how to create our cards. So again, this is what we're looking at, and let's go ahead and we'll go into, let's collapse our header, and we're on music, so let's go ahead and start there. So what we want to do with our cards is we actually want to go ahead and open up another section. And inside of that section, we want to create another container, another div. In this one, we're going to assign the ID of cards wrapper. And you'll see wrapper used in a lot of different web implementations and layouts and things like that, because of the fact that a lot of times, especially when you have multiple items, you want to be able to manage those multiple items and treat them as one unit. And so by wrapping them, it affords you the opportunity to reference an entire container full of items rather than have to deal with each specific item if you want to move that around. And there's a good chance that we won't do anything with this. But it's always nice to just go ahead and have it there so that you can control what's going on. For our cards, again, I'm going to copy and paste, and I'm going to hit beautify just to clean it up. And we're going to take a look at what I've copied and pasted in here so that we're able to learn a little about what we're doing, and then for the sake of time, move things along a little better. We have our cards wrapper, part of our wrapper. And this is our card, and you can see our card, we use a div and we give it a class of card because we're going to have multiple cards and we want to be able to change all of them at the same time. And we'll talk about this this click event later, as we'll take care of that. That's when we start discussing JavaScript. But for now, let's just look at it like this. Let's see that we have our card and we have a class of, we're using a class for card. We have a div and we have a class for card image. So this div, the card is the entire black space, as we can see. The card image, you can see we have a little box here that's just waiting to hold that image. And what we're doing is we're using a div instead of an image, and we're going to put the image in the background of the div so that if we choose to put content inside of our card, inside of our image, overlaying our image, we are able to do that. The next thing that we have is our div card info. In our div card info, what that allows us to do, you can see it's outlining it right now because we have it selected in our code. And you can see what's happening here is it's containing our title and our information, our current information. And you can see our card info text and our current title, and that it will make more sense to you as we add information to it. The other thing we want to take care of right away is inside of our CSS, we're doing some interesting things, and we're floating things, which will come to you more as time goes, and especially if you're a web major, you'll move on. But you can see we're overlaying the footer, and the way that we take care of that is we come down, and right after our card wrapper, we're going to put another div. And what we're going to do with that div is we're going to put the style attribute in, and we're going to say clear both. And what clear both does for us, you can see we've now pushed the footer down, and our card is just sitting there doing what we need it to do. And what clear both does is it tells it, stop applying the CSS to float, meaning to allow these cards to essentially float up against each other and to ignore certain parameters outside of themselves. And this, using clear both, this style clear both, essentially tells them, okay, that's it. Stop using it and start acting according to the layout of the HTML again. So now we're able to see and fix the footer problem, and we have our single card. So next thing we want to do is we'll go ahead and we'll place our 6 cards in. One thing that we can do is before we go copy paste, and put everything in, one of the things that we can do is we can go out and we'll grab a default file just so that we can see the pictures and come into play and have it look nice. And then we'll also have a way of kind of a check and balance to make sure that we've covered each card, because in the end what we're going to do is take this one card, replicate it 6 times on this page and 6 times on the movies page, and then update that information. So I downloaded a file that I'm going to use, and I'm going to go ahead into my folders, and to make things easier for myself, I'm going to drag my step 11 inside out over to my quick access area so I can get in there and just get to things as I want to. And then I'm going to go over to my downloads folder. In my downloads folder, given the season, I downloaded a image, and I named it default image. I also have the other images that I downloaded that I'm using. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab them all because I gathered my information. I'm going to copy them, all my images that I'm going to use. Hopefully I have them all there. I'm going to scroll up, go to my step 11, into my assets, and inside my assets folder, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it images. And inside my images folder, I'm going to paste all the pictures that I have downloaded. I named one of them default on purpose because we're going to use it. I needed to rotate that. We're going to use it just to fill in for now. And so if I go back to brackets and I take a look, I can see now that my images folder is showing up. Let me pull this out a little bit. I have my default image right there, my JPEG. I'm going to go back where I'm working on my card. And the way that we set a background image in a div is we tell it style, right? We're doing this inline and not in the CSS because each div is going to have its own image. Each div is going to have a different image. And so this is one of those times where using a inline style is not necessarily such a bad thing. And if I save it and go out and check out my preview, I can see now that my image is sitting in there. And this is probably a good time to talk about how that image is sitting in there and how it gets sized and placed. If I look at my style CSS and I go to my card image, I'm telling the div, this is actually card div, right? But we're calling it card image. And I'm telling the div to take 100% of the available space and only be 200 pixels high. We can see it's taking up all the space and it's 200 high. I'm telling the background not to repeat. If we turn this off and we put a small image in there, it would just keep repeating to fill up the background. It doesn't hurt because we have a large image. It won't repeat, but we don't need it. We might as well set it now in case we end up with a smaller one in there at some point for some reason. Our background position, what this is doing is it's looking for the center. It's saying, put me 50% to the left and right, put me 50% to the top and bottom, and ultimately what that does is it centers the image into the div, into the background of the div. And then we're using something called background size. We could put a number value in here, but thankfully with CSS3 and newer versions of CSS and advancements, we can just say cover. And what cover does is it sizes the image to the, let's go out and take a look at it so we can talk about it. Let's say that we know that we have 200 high here. If this image was only 150 and it was taking 100% left and right, we would end up with a blank area down here. So what cover does is it says, wait a minute, we don't want to leave this area blank. I'm going to go ahead and resize you, make you larger so that your smallest side covers the entire area available. And so essentially you could just think of the term coverage, and that will bring it, that should bring it into understanding for you. And then of course we're going ahead and we're putting a pixel radius, a border radius, and you can see right here, very small, but you can see the radius around the corners there. All right, so we'll go back over, and at this point, I think it's safe to say that we are ready to go ahead and create our 6 boxes we're currently on our music page. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to grab our code for our card. And we're going to copy it and paste it 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So at this point, when I go out, I should have 6 cards showing on my page, which I do. And my layout is excellent. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to populate as well. I'm going to go in and populate my movies page. So if I go ahead, go over to my movies page, we know that we need to, on the bottom of the movies page, we need to add that part that clears, the div that does the clearing for us. And honestly, the easiest thing to do at this point is to look at your music page. And if you collapse your section with everything in it, and you select it, you can copy it, go over to your movies page, and we'll go ahead and we'll collapse. That's the, actually we don't need to collapse that section. What we need to do is put space down here, and we paste that all in. And now we have both pages set up. We'll go ahead and take a look at movies. And there is our movies page as well. So we have our movie and our music page. Oh, it's not pulling that because we didn't save it. So let's go out and let's save our music page. Save. Let's go out and save our movies page so we can go back and take a look. And now we can see that it updated it. So at this point, we're ready to go ahead and populate our cards with our content before we move on to the JavaScript section of the lesson.